In this week's Sirens and Summations newsletter, I think it's number 5, we've talked about a couple themes: purpose and curiosity, and small acts of kindness adding up in service to other people. And so, uh, those who know me know that for pretty much most of my life, and I mean, even my childhood, I was always into the meaning of life and what my role is in the meaning of life. And then, of course, as you know, from the Sirens and Summations piece, when I became an EMT, and then eventually as a homicide prosecutor, trial lawyer, these themes were there all the time. And like I used to say to my staff, like, don't miss the greater meaning of what we're doing every day. We're on the front row of human nature, the good, the bad, the ugly, no matter how you look at it. And you can learn a lot when you're doing those kinds of jobs. But I want to say that I have been lecturing on mindfulness practices for decades now. And while I'm really glad to see that it's becoming more of a thing, one thing that I encountered many times was kind of a schism in thought process. There would be some people that were desperately in need of mindset messaging, purpose, curiosity in life, gratitude, joyfulness practices. And there were others that thought it was kooky, odd, weird, and something that wasn't right for them. And my human nature and my experiences in life informed me that these people were also dealing with scenarios that it would have been beneficial in their lives to have had this, but maybe they weren't willing to go there at that point in time. Nevertheless, when I went to Providence College, as you guys know from the discussion I had about Father Heath, I was so powerfully moved. I used to write poetry a lot in high school and read a lot of kind of heavy kind of philosophers, but the Dominican priest had a way of putting this into a container from studying from Mesopotamia and Egypt all the way to the modern time, all the great philosophers and religious leaders in a course called The Development of Western Civilization. And I could not get enough of that course. I think, bar none, it is one of the greatest academic courses in ever in the history of the United States of America. And they said it was 5 days a week. It was very intense for every single major. And they said that someday in the future, you'll realize what a difference this makes in your life, even if you think that the knowledge is impractical. That's what these priests were trying to say. It was true. Like the pre-med students and people like that would say, this isn't practical for me. But as we got older in life and we all accomplished those quote unquote goals of what our careers were going to be, this again, like I was talking about Father Heath planting seeds in your soul, they were there and they were being nourished by these philosophies, by these great religious leaders, by these great philosophy leaders from all different places, Eastern, Western. It didn't make a difference. And the thing that really intrigued me when I was reading this, and again, couldn't get enough of it, was how through all these faith-based different religions and all these great philosophers and great leaders like Marcus Aurelius, one of my faves of the Stoic philosophers. Uh, I mean, these were not weak-minded people. I believe, I don't want to say anything controversial here, and you can disagree with it, but people like Jesus and the Buddha, or these were not weak-minded people. These were revolutionary people. These were people that were going against the system. These were people that were influencing people greatly, and the people that were leaders at the time weren't all too happy about those things. So while their message may have been of peace and of loving thy neighbor and things of that nature, these were radical revolutionary theories that were a threat to the establishment. When the crucifixion of Christ, for example, happened for a reason. Okay, so that is just an example of one of these philosophies. These were not Marcus Aurelius was an emperor. Marcus Aurelius had to deal with how to lead, but came from a philosophy of Stoicism that dealt with present moment, dealt with graciousness and courteousness and decency and gentleness to people. The philosopher king, or I think they referred to themselves a little bit different at that point in time, but something similar to that. These are we're going to talk a little bit later in the new in the newsletter about the nuances of the dichotomies of life. Everything doesn't fit in a box, okay? And if you have that North Star of purpose and curiosity, and you're examining your life every day in the present moment and staying away as much as possible from the past and in the future, unless you absolutely have to inform your judgment in the present moment, then you can start to learn how, in my opinion, to act. So I was fascinated by these philosophers, and in this week's newsletter, I'm going to hopefully deliver the very practical wisdom of a couple. There's hundreds and hundreds that I've studied over the years that are all essentially talking about the same thing, about what your actions are in the present moment and your thought process and your mindset and how important it is. Guys, I write this newsletter, my last point, for a reason. As I had indicated earlier, and I'll say it over and over again, especially with respect to my TED Talk, if you ever get a chance, take a listen to it. None of us, I believe, wants to be on our deathbed wishing that we had done something that we didn't do because we were afraid to do it or someone told us we couldn't do it. Now, there are definitely things you may have not accomplished, and that's okay, so long as it wasn't for the wrong reasons. Okay, so it's my hope that you have a great deathbed confession, and that these newsletters, and especially this one, as we look through time immemorial, the wisdom of the great philosophers, religious leaders, and rulers and emperors will give you an insight that our human condition today is no different than it was then. No, in fact, we're still discussing the same thing, how to live the greatest life, the most joyful life in the present moment so that our life makes a difference in the lives of others.